Welcome back. Women and Child Development Minister Maneka Gandhi has said the centre is now working to change the country's juvenile law so that a 16-year-old who commits a crime like rape will be tried as an adult as well. Her statement reigniting the debate on India's laws after the row that erupted following Nirbhaya's rape.
He was just a few months shy of his 18th birthday, but that was the reason this man, who along with 5 others raped Nirbhaya, was sentenced to 3 years in a reform home, while the others were all sentenced to death. Now, could a change in law mean such juveniles could be tried as adults?
We are changing the law to bring 16-year-olds into the purview because, according to the police, 50% of all sexual crimes are 16-year-olds who know the JJ Act, Juvenile Justice Act, so they can do it.
Nirbhaya's parents had approached the Supreme Court challenging the constitutional validity of the Juvenile Justice Act. Their plea was turned down by the court.
ऐसे कानून बनने से, ऐसे फैसले लेने से एक तो हमारे समाज में जुगनाइलों के प्रति बहुत अच्छा संदेश जाएगा, हर जुगनाइलों के मन में कानून का खौफ होगा.
But it's an issue where opinion in the legal fraternity, as well as the political class and amongst activists, is deeply divided.
Nobody's against juvenile rights. We're all for juvenile rights. They also have responsibilities and that they cannot get away with crime.
Sending a person to jail is no solution, or there's something else that is wrong which you must correct rather than eliminating them.
Even as the debate on treating juveniles guilty of committing serious offences at par with adults rages on, the fundamental question remains: even if the law is amended, will it really act as a deterrent and make women safer in this country? In New Delhi, Neha Khanna for NDTV.
Well, if you remember, after the December 16th gang rape, we did a number of shows on this issue. There was a raging debate in this country over whether children as young as 16 or 15 years old should be tried as adults if they commit heinous crimes like rape, like murder. And it was a very, very divisive debate then also, and still today you find very differing opinions on it. Vinod Tikku, former member of the NCPCR and child rights activist, is here in the studio with us. Shireen Vakil Miller, Director for Policy and Advocacy of Save the Children, is also with us tonight. Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, Mr. KTS Tulsi, and Ranjana Kumari, the Director for the Centre for Social Research. Shireen Miller, let me ask you first, do you agree with the figure that Maneka Gandhi has put out today, that 50% of all sexual crimes today are done by 16-year-olds? Because I did hear some voices today who were questioning that statistic, although the statistics are quite worrying. Does this sound accurate to you?
No, it actually doesn't sound accurate, because if you actually look at the figures from the National Crime Records Bureau, you'll see that only about 1.0, 1.2% of crimes committed in the country are committed by juveniles. When it comes to rapes, the figure stands at about 4% of all rapes are committed by this age group. In fact, the figure for 2013 is about 33,707 rape cases that were reported, of which about 1,388 were of this age group. So actually, I don't know where that figure comes from, but from the National Crime Records Bureau, it's much lower and has stayed consistent. There hasn't been an increase in the rate of sexual violence crimes by juveniles in the last 2 or 3 years, whereas, as you know, there's been a large increase in the rate of adults.
You know, KTS Tulsi is disputing that, and I'm coming to that because KTS Tulsi, there seem to be very differing figures. I mean, even the National Crime Records Bureau data that she's citing, the same data tells us that there has been a dramatic jump in rapes committed, for instance, by those in that 16-year age group just between 2012 and 2013. It's quite a big jump. I think those numbers are already on our screen. So it shows a jump of more than 34%. So, you know, do we go by data here, or do we just go by, you know, crime to crime, that as some Western countries have, if it's a heinous crime, even the child will be tried as an adult?
But data is the surest guide. And according to my data from National Crime Record Bureau, between 2000 to 2012, there is a 65% increase in the crimes, serious crimes, by people between 16 to 18 years of age. 65% increase. For example, in 2000, there were less than 300 cases of murder. in which juveniles of that age were involved. And in 2011, there was 1198 cases of murder. And similarly, there is a dramatic increase in the rapes. In 2009, there were 798 rapes by people between 16 to 18. In 2010, 858, and in 2011, 1149. And that's a kind of, and they are actually, I think, perhaps the juveniles are also becoming victims of the criminal gangs who hire them, knowing fully well that in 3 years they'll be out. And they are therefore getting exploited by this provision. It's neither in the interest of the juveniles nor in the interest of the society. And
so you wholeheartedly would support a change in the law by the government?
I wholeheartedly support change in the law.
Mr. Tikku, why would you disagree with that? Because the statistics, as per whatever we have, are a bit scary.
Well, I would not mind looking at those statistics once again, but then look at the numbers, go by the numbers. We have a child population of 440 million, and if you look at that population and then look at the crime, this it becomes a minuscule. This debate was triggered off by the December 16 incident.
Yeah.
Now, for that one incident, which is a stray incident, do we need to really go back from a progressive state to a retrograde state?
Is it a stray incident?
It is one of those incidents. I mean, look at that. This is what triggered off the whole debate. And today, if we do that, now what is the guarantee that tomorrow a child of 15 years and 9 months would not do the same thing again, and then we go again revising reducing the age of the child? Now, reducing the age of the child has repercussions somewhere else as well. It's not just this law. And JJ Act by far has been one of the most flexible laws India has had. And we definitely have a state responsibility also towards these children who have been who are getting fallen into these kind of traps. Has the state done anything to get them out of those, to prevent them to getting into those traps? State has not done.
So you think it's going to be a completely regressive
Definitely
move?
Yes, it's not a progressive.
But you know, people, I'll just go to Shireen Miller. I'll go back to Shireen Miller before I come to Ranjana. Shireen Miller, a lot of people, you know, again, the Nirbhaya, I come back to the Nirbhaya case because that just, I think, shook this country in a way no other case did. And, you know, to know that this young man did what he did to her and, you know, will walk out after 3 years, maybe he has a year plus left for his juvenile term. It's just something that a lot of people cannot reconcile with. You may not want him to necessarily hang for it, but it's just so disproportionate to what he did, having been just a few months short of the age of 18.
No, sure. I mean, I think that no one, it was a horrific thing that happened. And, you know, the point is that no one is saying that he should walk out. I mean, the point is that there is a system, and the system has been devised because of the age and the stage of a child, and it's not something that should just then randomly been changed. Now, of course, the point is that all care and attention must be made to make sure that this young person does not reoffend, is not a danger to society, and if I mean, there could be an amendment to look at whether you need, in certain very, very rare cases, to have some level of extension of the law. But that needs to be discussed, and that needs to be based on evidence, and very critically evidence of the adolescent brain and the child, which is why you have a separate Juvenile Justice Act. And really, to look at it, the reason that we're looking at it is to prevent crime against women. And if you look at the statistics, they are very, very low. I mean, the percentage of juveniles, whether it's 2%, which is what all our records show, you know, or if someone wants to dispute that it has gone higher, but still, of let's say 33,707 rapes, only 1,300 were from this age group. So you have a much larger percentage, much larger percentage out there that really, it's not going to solve the issue by throwing 16-year-olds into adult prisons. In fact, you will turn them into more hardened criminals.
But
and
are they,
in the world
I think one of the questions,
shown,
okay, Ranjana Kumari, is that whether these
16-year-olds
who are going into juvenile, are they really being rehabilitated? I mean, you know, I shudder to think how the Indian system works. Well, but Ranjana Kumari, are they really being rehabilitated?
See, without compromising the rights of children, it is very important to look at, and also I don't think quoting statistics is going to be any defense for what has been proposed at the moment, because, you know, the way nature of crime is extremely important to consider. You know, what could, and also fixing criminal responsibility is very important. Now, many countries like England, like in Australia, like in even America, it's been fixed at 10 and 12. And also nature of crime needs to be considered. It's extremely important that we should look at the kind of crime, the heinousness of crime, the brutality that is there. It needs to be looked at. And if we look at that, then even if it is in 100 cases or 500 cases, it needs to be punished severely. I think this is extremely important. I do stand for rights of children, and I think it's very important to protect them. And also
What
look
do you
at
do
the
if you lower the age to 16, Ranjana, then what happens if a child 15 years and 9 months, as he said, commits a heinous crime?
That's what I'm saying, that there has to be,
where do you
see, 10
draw the
year
line?
onwards, 10 year onwards or 12 year on, or our laws, I think, I'm sure Mr. Tulsi would talk about it, they have already fixed it at 12, even within our own. And also within the Juvenile Justice Act, there is a graded punishment that has been recommended. So that graded punishment can then be, the cases can be referred to the normal court and normal procedure. Why not? Just one amendment in Juvenile Justice Act in which we can say that serious nature of crime without consideration of age, I am telling it with some seriousness, because we are seeing many cases, we deal with rape cases, we are dealing with child.
How young? How young?
Yeah. It could be 12 because it's already established in our laws. It could be 16 as Maneka Gandhi is proposing. You see, whichever age you will decide, a month before that will look like too young. Isn't that right? So you have to decide and you have to make that amendment saying that looking at the nature of crime, such and such case should be referred to the normal court. That this is all we are saying, and I think this is absolutely right, given the age and time we are living, given the age and time the crime of this age group is increasing.
I think that to Mr. Tiku, because she made a point about other countries. Like
and
in,
also
in
this
England,
one condition, one more thing, just I want to say, Nidhi, that look at the condition of our reform homes. Children are becoming more hardened criminal there, and nobody is monitoring it. Nobody is monitoring it. Nobody is monitoring it.
They may not do much better in an adult jail cell.
Both ways it is equally bad. I mean, nobody is monitoring after whether they are repeat offenders or not.
But the fact is that other countries do take into account the nature of the crime.
Yeah,
but why can't we take into account the nature of the crime?
Yes.
You have 20 states in the United States that allow juveniles to be tried as adults depending on the nature of the crime. Why
Number
can't we do that?
lot many times the reference to US has been given. I mean, that's been made a point in the debate also. But US is not a signatory to UNCRC. Let's be very clear about that.
There are UN conventions that we have signed.
India is a signatory
to
Australia. India is a signatory.
How about Australia?
So
how
let's
about
not
England?
get into that.
They are signatories.
But in that case, in the reforms that they have taken up, like she said, the shelter homes, India as a state has failed in really monitoring those reform homes.
That's my point.
This is where in fact we are breeding up. So we have to take care of that. Why should we escape our responsibility by not taking care of the children out there, and then suggesting a harsh measure of put them to gallows just because he has committed a crime? Yes, he has committed a crime that needs to be looked into, but not that he put him to gallows because we failed in our preventive measures.
No, but are children today at 16 really children anymore? I think that is the question that people are asking, KTS Tulsi. And therefore, should it be dependent on the crime, the nature of the crime?
That's true. Nowadays, the modern child matures much faster, much earlier than they used to maybe 20 years ago or 50 years ago. Because of the explosion in information technology, the amount of information that's available to them, they are only maturing faster. They are growing up, and there is greater aggression that is being seen in the children. That's very worrisome, and that's why even in England and Wales, the age for criminal responsibility is 10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
It's 10.
And in Australia, it's 14 to 18 years. So there's a flexibility which is given to the judges.
Again, depends on the nature of the crime. If it's
Nature
a heinous crime,
that's exactly the point, that a person who can commit rape can definitely also be hanged for that crime. He could commit it. He's not a child anymore. If he can commit rape, he must be responsible for his criminal actions.
Shireen Miller, you disagree?
No, there is no country that actually says that has a death sentence, not even regressive states of the United States.
It doesn't have to be the death sentence.
Look, death penalty is a different debate.
No,
we're not talking about death penalty.
Because
we are
he
saying
said,
that
because the point is he said that the
at
person
the age
before,
when they commit serious crime, looking at the nature of the crime.
I think that No, I mean, I think fixing the age of criminal responsibility is important, but that is a different issue. Even where there are lower ages of criminal responsibility, they're still not tried in adult courts. They're still tried within a juvenile justice system. Whether it is the UK, whether it is Australia, and whether it is different states of America have different policies. And in fact, the evidence, like in New York, when they did have a policy to put children into adult, 17-year-olds, not children the age of 17, they actually showed that they were more reoffenders by putting them into adult prison. So in fact, then they changed that law.
But
so
nobody is studying the reoffenders in India. That is the problem. Nobody is following. Nobody is following how many are getting reformed from their homes. Nobody is studying the reoffenders. Nobody is looking at what's happening to these
children. But that is what we need to do. We need to pay attention to our reform homes. We need to make sure that we have professionals in the system, that there are trained people who understand about child development.
But you need flexibility in the law most of all.
Do not go back to re-offend and are safe.
But Shireen Miller, I think what Mr. Tulsi is saying about flexibility in the law,
rehabilitated.
Shouldn't there be that amount of flexibility that if a 16-year-old is part of a gang rape, for example, that there should be severe punishment for that. 3 years doesn't cut it. I'm not saying the death penalty. That's a different debate. But there has to be a jail term for that. Should there be that flexibility depending on the nature of the crime?
Well, there is a term. Maybe what you're contesting is that perhaps 3 years is not good enough. And as I said earlier, maybe we need to look at the extension in certain cases, but that needs to be deliberated and discussed based on evidence. It cannot just be done in an ad hoc way. But in general, for 16-year-olds, it should be done within the purview of the Juvenile Justice Act, which should stay at 18, because it was good reason that it was fixed at 18. We did
I would like to quote a case.
I have a problem with that kind of a age.
Why?
I have a problem because, when you call someone child and someone is in teenage, say from 14 to upwards, 13 upwards. Just let me complete for a minute. I think what the problem is that that's the time when they are going through mental, physical, biological changes, and there are a lot of these criminality comes in at that point of time when you are interacting with the peer group, and so calling it a child and absolving the person of the responsibility of the nature, heinousness of crime, the severity of the crime that is I think really putting ourselves in a very ignorant kind of a situation where we are not wanting to look at the seriousness. So I think it's important that we should amend the law and we should change it.
We need to have a relook at then in that case the POCSO Act as well. That's Prevention of Children from Sexual Offences Act, wherein the age between 16 and 18, when we said that they should be allowed, they should not be, their act should not be criminalized, because they are the ones, as she said, they go into those, they have that lot of inquisitiveness about their body, because the biological changes are taking place, they are actually growing up, and they are certain unexplained questions in their mind which they normally do not go to their adults and ask them, and they try to explore
but maybe
things.
we need to redefine who a child is.
Yes, we have to definitely, I think, not redefine.
Children is not a good
I think
idea.
we have to have a cutoff.
It's
We cannot
totally
suddenly,
wrong.
because of the whims and fancies of one person or one ministry or one this thing, then we go ahead and change every time. Do we again change?
Okay,
as I said
I have to leave it at that, but I have to say here that I don't think it's a women fancy. I mean, there shouldn't be a knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
I agree with that.
Yes.
But I think that this is something we have debated for a while, and I think at least we're talking about it. But I don't think it's a women fancy either. But I think it's something to ponder over, and hopefully the government will take your views into account on how best to do this before the law is actually changed. I have to leave it at that tonight. Thank you very much to all of you for coming in and speaking on this sensitive issue. That's it on the show this evening. We'll see you again tomorrow at the same time. Do join us then.